There you go.
Quite important. Clap sync. All right, now time to start the recording.
Listen, I knew what to do. I just didn't know when to do it. I've done it before, just a little out of order this time. I don't know if I've ever told you. I used to make like gaming videos like back when I was in high school with a buddy of mine. We always tried to get it off the ground a couple different times, but never really went anywhere.
Well, I think you're making a pretty good effort now. I mean, you are working to be in 3 different media spaces right now, which is kind of what you got to do anyways, but
gotta work hard. I feel like it doesn't really feel like I am putting in, like the work hard, because it doesn't get the rewards right away the same way that regular work does, but it just feels good doing it, and that's really all I care about.
I agree. It does feel good doing it. The only video that I tried to make, or I guess I tried to make a couple of videos back in high school, but the main one that I abandoned, that I was really sad about, I pirated Sony Vegas for this. Tub Thumping by Chumbawamba.
Oh, you got
This was like before it was like such a big trend to make 10-hour versions of things. This was like at the beginning of that.
Sure.
And I just wanted to play like the start of the song, and then I get knocked down,
and I get up again, and nothing gonna keep me down.
And just edit that to be 10 hours long, and then at the end of that, just have the end of the song.
And at the end of it, just I get knocked down, and then he doesn't get up again.
Cliffhanger. Well, welcome to the very special 5th episode of CRT.
Cold Hard Trash, episode 5. The video is live. That's why we did it, for that rhyme specifically. Didn't just come up with that on the spot. We had that cooked, cocked, and loaded.
Exactly. I'm your host, Breg.
And I am also your host, Trash Can.
And we are going to talk.
Yeah.
I don't know how much we really got prepared for this one, but
don't really need to have much prepared. We kind of fired off a little too much about AI beforehand. We don't need to get back into it.
Another thing that makes this episode special is that we're kind of waiting for a divine intervention to give us inspiration here.
I just got it. I was gonna say this Army Man bucket. It has the certificate.
Toy Story Official.
Toy Story Official has the certificate of authenticity signed by John Lasseter, who was the guy who made Toy Story, one of the guys who founded Pixar. Are you familiar with the Pixar Story, that documentary?
No. I mean, I know that somehow Steve Jobs was involved.
Yeah,
I don't know how. I don't know why.
I think it was Steve Jobs and Steve Spielberg was the other one, that they just came together to make the studio. But growing up as a kid, Growing up as a kid, I loved the movie Brave Little Toaster. Had that on VHS, and it was one of my go-to favorites. In the documentary, The Pixar Story, and it's a documentary, so I'm led to believe that it's all true. No, they're not telling falsehoods. John Lasseter, after becoming like one of the lead animators at Disney, like graduating from the Disney Animation School with top honors and whatnot, he decides to make a cartoon animation with computer animation, because it was right around the time that computers were starting to come out and be big in animation. And when he brings it to Disney executives, I think the exact quote they tell him is like, the only way you should use computers is if it's cheaper or if it saves time. And they turn around and send him out. He gets back to his office, he finds out that he's fired. And that's kind of his impetus to go and start Pixar. But before he does that, he sells off the rights to make that movie, The Brave Little Toaster. It has like so many similarities to Toy Story 2, of the things coming to life when nobody's looking sort of deal. And it's one of the things I never put together in my childhood of like, oh wow, I think it says at the beginning it's a John Lasseter movie, but I didn't know who that was as a kid, obviously. But it was just such a formative movie in my childhood, and I had no idea it had this crazy backstory of like, it was the thing that made John Lasseter go and start Pixar, because it got him kicked out of Disney. It was so cool.
Yeah. But also that points out that things coming to life when humans aren't looking is not property of Pixar, because you can also do it with appliances.
Yeah.
We need to come up with our own IP of a different category of household items that come alive when we aren't looking. Now, appliances and toys are kind of big ones. Furniture? Animals?
I would say in the Brave Little Toaster, furniture and animals. Furniture and clothes, I think, are both a thing in the Brave Little Toaster, already alive. So I think they kind of covered all the grounds with that. Yeah. Animals, though. Now that maybe some sort of zoo type movie, like a zoo paradise, something like that. Some sort of wonderful utopia with a zoo involved.
Yeah. I mean, humans aren't looking, so anything could be happening at that point.
Yeah. They feel like we're straying closer to Rule 34 content. Should steer it away from that.
This is an issue. We're working on it.
I thought about an idea for a Dungeons and Dragons campaign that I wanted to call Gumdrops and Gunshots, where you're elves trying to go take back like presents that have been stolen by Satan. And the way you do that is not only by like rolling dice, but I would also give you like packages of gumdrops and also real life bullets. And then to use magic, you'd have to roll a gumdrop along with your dice, and you'd have to like manage your store of gumdrops versus your store of bullets, because that was the other thing, is you get your elfin thing is like you get gumdrops, licorice, and then a Glock 45 to go and get the presents back. So you can either use your magic skills or you could just stick to your Glock and just shoot demons.
Reminds me of the week that Doom and Animal Crossing came out, and they're just putting all these pictures of Isabelle and Doom guy hanging out.
Yeah, Isabella with a shotgun, yeah.
Yeah, you got your little elves, and they also have guns and shoot demons.
You're going to be members of Elf Force 1. It's still in the early stages. Next time I host a game night, we'll have to try something like that out. Wanted to do some D&D.
Nice. Yeah. I'm always a big fan of Roll for Shoes.
Yeah.
It's so classic, and it really lends itself to like being built as you play it.
Yeah.
Because you roll a 6, any sort of critical success on your however many dies you have, you gain that skill, and you get to roll another die if you want to do that again. So you don't really ever know what, and it always gets more specific.
Right.
So you don't really have much of a choice in how you want to build like your character and stuff like that. You're just kind of lucking out, and you're like, well, now that I have a higher point in the skill, like, I guess I gotta do more of this. So there's a story of weaponized soap.
That's the only thing I can...
Weaponized soap 6.
The only thing I can do is soap, so I must use the soap. I like Everyone's John for like the reason of just like it forces everybody to be creative, especially the DM more than anybody, because they have to try to make situations where like possibilities could arise, and they still have to leave it up to the players to make those possibilities happen. So it's really funny.
Yeah, the only thing I don't really like about Everybody's John is that your like ability to play the game is sort of in competition with others.
Yeah,
because only one character is in control of John at a time.
Right.
So
definitely doesn't do good with bigger groups.
Yeah. I mean, I've hosted it with like 2 or 3 people before.
Right.
And that's, that's fun. It's like a nice little conversation, put stuff together. There's this one guy, Grant Howitt, on Twitter that I follow. And he pretty regularly comes out with one-shot games. So he'll put together like a 1-page tabletop game. That's like all the rules, maybe like a couple pages.
Yeah.
And it has the setup, it has like your goal and stuff like that, and it has its mechanics laid out where it's like, that's kind of hard to think of right now because I haven't seen his posts in a while, but like sometimes you'll be like a goblin and you only have 2 skills, kind of like what you were saying where it's like gumdrops and bullets, where it's like you can only do 2 things, and like that is your way to, that's your only tools to navigate the world.
Huh, interesting. That's all you can do if you come upon a rock. Will you shoot it or will you magic it?
Yeah. You got 2 choices.
Yeah, I've actually been working a little bit on a video essay just about like the 2-button game in general, about how like it came out in, I think it was 1983. I looked up. Elevator Action was the first like arcade cabinet to use a joystick and 2 buttons, like just that. Because there were other like Mario had the joystick and 1 button, and Asteroids, I think it was, had
Mario
2
has
buttons.
2 buttons.
The original one, or Donkey Kong, sorry.
Correct.
And
Yeah.
no, I think Mario only has one button too. It's only
No,
jump.
so, Super Mario Brothers for the NES has sprint and jump.
Oh, for the NES, yeah. I'm talking about Super Mario Brothers, the arcade game.
You're talking, yeah.
Super Mario Bros. The NES came out in 1985.
Yeah, I'm unfamiliar with your game. You're saying the original Mario, and I'm
Yeah,
thinking like, okay, yeah, Mario 1.
To
Oh.
be fair, yeah, even when I said the original Mario, I was incorrect because I meant Donkey Kong, the original Jumpman.
Yeah.
But as I was saying, Elevator Action came out in 1983, was the first one to use like a joystick and two buttons. And like you look up the reviews for the game at the time, and some of the things people are saying of like it's praised for the ability, like the player interactability, just the fact that you can do more than one thing. It's just like blew people's minds. And it was like, okay, that's like a neat jump that we've made in video game technology. So now we need to progress further, right? Like you have fighting games that have your 6-button layouts, you have different games that have all sorts of proprietary controls, light guns, driving cabinets, yada yada. But still, even as the years progressed on, you have Turtles in Time, the X-Men game, the Avengers game, even like the Simpsons had a beat-em-up game. That beat-em-up style just kind of emerged from that joystick and two buttons. And even from that, as you go out of the arcade generations, going into like the 90s and 2000s, you get games like Limbo on the Xbox 360, like going all the way up to pretty current. That's joystick, two buttons. Pretty simple game, though, not really a whole in-depth, mostly story. But then you have Overcooked, Played Up, you have Crawl, you have Broforce, you have all these different types of games that are basically just two buttons and a joystick are all you need. You didn't really ever need to progress beyond that. There's something so like intrinsic about it of just being just simple enough but just complex enough to hit right in that pocket. Super interesting.
I think there's kind of a lot of interesting things that come up where I think it has to do with the rules of the game, like what's your objective and stuff like that. Because you could probably say the same thing about soccer. You run and you kick.
Yeah.
Of course it's more complicated than that. There's rules and like restrictions and how you have to play the game, offsides, all that shit.
Right, and you can set up plays and make other people motion, and there's also like passing beyond shooting and different things like that.
Which is all done through the medium of running and kicking.
Yeah.
And so, that's just one button, really.
Right, but it's just the way they make that translate between the kicks of like the different buttons. That's the another thing I bring up. Is like even as you go into consoles, like in the Super Nintendo, how many games in the Super Nintendo were you able to A, look at the controller layout, and B, be able to see that half the buttons were unused? Because games just couldn't figure out how to use the shoulder buttons, or they were just like an additional way to do the same thing that the face buttons did.
Yeah.
Because just like people couldn't figure out what to do beyond two buttons. And even as like, the controllers got more standardized of the two joystick and the face, you still had like Super Meat Boy on the Xbox 360 that came out. Smash hit game. All it is move, jump. You can run, jump, and that's it.
Yeah.
That's all you need.
Yeah, it's about like I think we do pretty well with having like a low set of actions. Like Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, like I like the games, like them a lot. Don't really like the button layouts because there'll be times where I'm just trying to do something and I like press Y and then it's like, oh well, that opens up the map. You get a phone in game and the phone actually has to load the map before you can close it. Which takes up time.
Right.
I really don't think they did good with the button layout. Just because, like, especially when you have, like, different buttons and each one sort of takes you to a different thing and, like, maybe puts you in a different menu and stuff like that.
Right.
I'd really appreciate if you just kind of, like, had that on screen at all times.
Yeah. Just like
Or had a reveal button where
you could
like,
bring up the UI, just, like, pop it up, like,
yeah,
what does each
that
one
just
do?
gives you, like, here are your menu buttons. This is what all your menu buttons do.
Yeah. That would definitely be a good quality of life if you're listening, Pokemon. Figure it out.
There's also the start and select buttons, which are pretty interesting because select kind of fell out of favor when you realized you could just press A.
Yeah, select was one of those things that it kind of fell out of favor like immediately because it became a thing on, I think it was like...
It was on Super Nintendo.
It was on regular Nintendo too, just a regular NES. Yeah, it was on there, but it was one of the things like you never really needed. Like it was literally the button called select. It was character select and different things like that. But there was, you could watch angry video game nerd videos about like every single game that didn't use it, and the ones that did were like very like strange that you had to use just the select button. And it was just like why was that the only way you could do it? There's no reason for it. I don't know why.
Yeah, so it got abandoned.
But it's still a thing.
No, I mean, the modern controllers actually have it replaced with, like, a share button.
Right, or a menu button, but that's the thing is,
like menu 2.
Even though it was basically obsolete as it was made, it still kind of remains as a standard.
We're kind of used to... It's a spot that you can put a button, and people will be like, yeah, you can put a button there.
Yeah.
I've seen buttons there. Buttons go there.
If it was gone, it would look weird. If it was just a start button, it would just be like, where's my select button? Even though I don't think I've ever used it for anything. It's just, yeah, it's another good place for a button. You're right.
Yeah, some random games I've played have asked for it. Like,
oh, sure. Like
Gunfire Reborn uses it for some stuff.
You play controller on it?
Yeah, I mean, like...
Right.
It's I don't know. I'm still figuring out. I've only played it twice. But I felt more comfortable with a controller, especially with, like... They got that one glove where you have to keep a steady rhythm.
Yeah,
the right click.
That's such a bitch glove to use with keyboard mouse. Yeah.
I fucking loved it on controller.
Really?
Well, so the thing is, it auto aims.
Okay.
So
yeah, I was gonna say it just snaps to enemies. So all you have to do is really focus on like firing on beat.
Yeah, and that's the left trigger. So you just, you can set the audio up and you can keep an eye on it, and all you got to do is like make sure you're sort of looking in their direction and you're within range.
Yeah.
And then you can focus on doing that, and it's a lot easier to do that on controller. So I felt vindicated that there was literally one thing at least that was easier to do on controller in that game.
I like that glove, but I play the dog, so gun zerking with it is impossible. You can't actually do it while you have it.
Yeah, when you use your like alt or whatever,
right,
you can bring out both weapons.
It's fun being Tony Stark though, using the laser and the fire glove. You just both hands.
At the beginning of the game, someone gave me a lightning glove.
Yeah, zap gloves.
And I didn't use it. I liked my corrosion glove where I get to play the rhythm thing. I also like Sekiro a lot, and that is a rhythm game.
Really?
In my opinion, it's a commonly like said thing between like fans of the game, just because like you need, as you're playing it, like you'll block, and then like someone will do a combo on you, and you'll hear all the like the space and time between each different hit.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're blocking, you're taking posture damage. So if your posture meter fills up and you're not deflecting, you get your posture broken, and then they can, like, your guard drops for a second. And a lot of the stronger enemies, like, yes, they do more damage, but they also have combos that are set up to break your posture and then end in something that is actually meant to do a lot of damage.
Mm-hmm. Right, so it just basically sets you up and then just to knock you down.
Yeah, they knock you down, and then that's when they pull out the real big kick.
Right.
But if you're holding down the button, you get to hear that thing the entire time, and you know that you could be deflecting, and if you deflect, you do posture damage to them, and you can't have your posture broken on a deflect. So, you block, and then you start hearing the order of things and stuff like that, and then you try to deflect more and more, and then using that, you can overwhelm the enemy. And that's rhythm. It's the rhythm in which they're attacking you.
That's kind of crazy. I never knew that.
Yeah. It's, I think it's super cool. I really liked that angle when I read it the first time, because I was like, oh yeah, like, that makes sense.
I'm a much simpler man when it comes to rhythm games. Mike Tyson's Punch-Out! Which is one of my favorites.
Yeah, it is kind of that's a rhythm game too. Yeah, you gotta hit your punches. You gotta look out for like specific things and memorize. Get a feel for their timings.
It's all just reaction. Yeah, their patterns. I still to this day can like have everything memorized to be able to beat it. It's one of the first games I ever beat.
Yeah, I think it's cool that they did the Wii version of it, and it was like pretty much the same gameplay, but like just completely new visuals.
Yeah.
I mean, like obviously new visuals. It was on the Wii.
You were literally able to just turn the controller sideways and play it that way. It's super cool.
Yeah.
I love that game. I think that was one of my favorite games in the Wii, besides Guitar Hero 3.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely a top tier.
Yeah, that's the one that had Donkey Kong in it.
Yes, you could fight Donkey Kong if you got into endless mode. I think it was like 15 fights into it.
Yeah, I heard it was you needed to beat New Game Plus.
So there is no really like New Game Plus. There's like once you beat the game, you get into this mode where like your trainer Doc's like, "Oh, are you sure, Mac? 3 more fights or 3 more losses, and you want to give it up?" And then he just throws a punch that stops right in front of his face, and he's like, "All right, son, we'll get to it." And then you just you fight endlessly, and if you lose 3 times, and it's over. Your career mode's done.
Okay.
And then afterwards, you can go back and like do each fight individually because they have like challenge mode or whatever. But you can't do the career mode anymore.
They give Glass Joe a helmet.
Yeah,
so you can't punch him in the head anymore.
I was gonna say that's part of the regular campaign. You go through the campaign twice, and everybody like learns from getting the shit kicked out of you of like how to beat you now. And one of them, Glass Joe just puts on like headgear.
Yeah.
Because the doctor's like, you're gonna die if you get hit in the head again. The best part is the best way to beat him is you hit him with a star punch, and that hits the headgear flying off him above him, and then you get to hit him in the face really hard again. Give him more cool. CTE.
Yeah.
Take that, you Frenchman. Good times. I love Punch Out for the Wii.
Yeah.
Mr. Sandman just gets so mad that you beat him, he just punches a building to like the ground. Just and then he's standing in the rubble. It's like, oh god.
And you beat him.
And you still beat his ass, yeah.
Yeah.
He's got 300 pounds and like 2 feet on you, but you're jumping up there and just cracking him.
I mean, by the rules of power scaling, that means you also can canonically do that.
Yeah.
And you just choose not to.
Right, exactly. Little Mac is probably one of the most strongest like anime fighters.
Mm-hmm.
Little Mac v Goku. Put it on.
Now that I'm thinking about power scaling, I remember, like, I don't know, I definitely think it's has a lot of fun questions to ask. Mm-hmm. You know, like, could Goku beat Superman or some shit like that? And then, like, putting together an argument and presenting that, I agree. Putting together an argument and, like, listing out, like, what are the abilities, like, what have we seen from this character? How could they counter specific things that the other person does?
Right.
Like, do they know these types of tricks already? Would they fall for them again?
Right.
But it really butts up against, like, non-power, like, just regular storytelling. Because you think about One Punch Man, and it's kind of like, well, he just wins all of his fights.
Yeah, with
that's
one
his thing. He just wins all of his fights with one punch. Could he beat Goku?
I mean, that's the whole thing of like.
Well, in the story, he wins all of his fights with one punch,
and
so it doesn't matter that it's Goku,
well,
because in the literature, if you bring that to a power scaling thing, it's sort of like above the level of that conversation where that determination is made.
Well, no, because I'll bring it right back down of that. A, he doesn't win all his fights in one punch. He's already had a fight where he's had to use, I think, a series of consecutive normal punches. No, it was a series. Mm-hmm. A series of consecutive normal punches, and it just absolutely decimated the guy, turned him into nothing. But, you know, second is that the argument we made that he's won all of his fights in one punch or a certain amount of punches so far. Which is because, I mean, like, when you get into power scaling things, like, there literally is a part in the anime where he goes to, like, the hero, tests to, like, scale himself against other heroes, and he's able to do the jumping across, like, really fast, the line record. He's able to lift more than anybody. So he does have, like, a legitimate scale to him. And when you're talking about power scale, it's not just like a fact of his character. Like, it's not just a fact of his character, because that's, like, usually where I get into the argument of, like, Goku is, his whole character is that he always gets stronger to beat the bad guy, and Superman's powers, he's always the strongest. So that's why Superman must win. It's like, that's some shit. Because that's just what the story is about. That's nothing about them. That's just their overarching story.
What if someone's power is just to win?
That's, I mean, kind of bullshit, but I mean, no one's had that power. I mean, and even if there is, there's probably like, some kind of like Teen Titans episode about that, right? Where somebody has like this super OP power, but then there's just one caveat to where like, I didn't think about that. No, so lets them win.
The bucket of water.
Right, exactly. Something really simple. We were like, that's why that power sucks.
Yeah.
Yeah, I forget what made us get into that topic, but Goku would definitely beat Superman.
Yeah. I mean, agreed. I remember watching, I think it was a video from Trope Talk about celestial happenings or something like that. Not like it was about the whole thing of like if an astronomical thing is determining fate determines what happens, you kind of don't have any ability to stop that deadline.
Right.
It is hard. Like, you are not going to be moving planets and stuff like that to change the outcome or to delay the outcome of what's going to happen.
Right.
They did it in Dragon Ball. Gohan turned into a giant monkey, and Piccolo blew up the moon.
Not a planet, technically, but yeah.
Not a planet, but it is a celestial body, you know.
Yeah, he was going to. I mean, he was going to turn into the monkey, and he blew up the moon, which was the second time that's happened in Dragon Ball Z fandom. People don't often know that. Roshi did the same thing in Dragon Ball with Goku, which is another
Why
thing.
do they have another moon? There's just 2 moons on the planet?
Yeah.
No, they were different series, Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z. There's no connection between them, right?
No, it's the exact same continuation.
I know. But
Yeah, I was gonna say
I'm grasping at straws to explain 2 moons.
Akira Toriyama is like notorious for literally just forgetting things about Dragon Ball Z, because like there's certain things in Dragon Ball too, like Goku gets his tail ripped off like 3 different times because he gets it ripped off, and it's a thing like, oh, it's gonna grow back. This is a thing you're living with forever. You're gonna have to be cursed with the great ape, whatever. It's the sand thing. So that's the first time he gets it ripped off. Roshi blows up the moon. It's like, all right, cool, done and done. Realizes it grows back. Grandpa Gohan rips it off a second time, and then it grows back. And then I think he rips it off a third time, his own self, just to be like, I'm giving this up. It's my own, like, this is what I do. I rip off my tail. Dragon Ball Z comes, never has to worry about a tail. Gohan gets a tail, right? Piccolo blows up the moon, ends up ripping off his tail. Done and done, just like the first time. And it's actually done and done. Gohan never grows the tail back, never has to worry about it. Goten gets born, doesn't even have a tail. What's going on? Sand just completely
The literary device has run its course. You know, we can't keep blowing up the moon.
He just forgot that Sans had tails. He was like, someone brought it up to him, and he was just like, "Oh yeah, I forgot that was a thing. That I was. Whoops."
I find myself like I do end up noticing like inconsistencies in stories and stuff like that, and I'm like, you know, that doesn't really add up. But a lot of the time, I kind of just don't even notice it, and I just take it all at face value, and then I give myself the work of like putting those 2 pieces of information together and trying to come up with an explanation for why both can be true.
Sure.
You know, so like we're talking about blowing up the moon and shit like that. Maybe they just had 2 moons.
Maybe one of the Dragon Ball wishes brought the moon back too. Maybe when
they
were,
like you know, there's so much stuff that can happen off screen. Like a lot of stuff. Of course, there's going to be stuff left out of the story, left unsaid.
Right.
And then you kind of have to fill in the gaps yourself. And so I just try and figure out like, okay, considering all of this conflicting information, is there anything that could bring it together?
Right. And not for Dragon Ball. It's literally just like, it's a thing known that there's just plot holes abound. And oh well. Like, there was one that they immediately got rid of with like the Patora earrings, the fusion earrings. Do you know about those?
Yeah, where they needed them to make Gogeta.
I think it's Vegito. Gogeta is with the fusion dance, which is only what you call it. That wears off after a limited time. That was the thing. The Terra earrings or Tora earrings, whatever they were the caveat of them was you put them on and you're stuck. So like one of the Supreme Kai, and I forget like who his like advisor was, like did that to show it, and they were like, oh yeah, now we're fused. And then it was after then they realized they were stuck together that way forever, and they're just like, oh shit. But Majin Buu comes along, and Goku says to Vegeta, like, I think they're in hell when they do it too. He's like, listen, we need to put these earrings on. We're gonna be stuck together forever, but we don't got any other option, bud. It's this or nothing. And he's like, I would rather die than do this with you. He's like, we're in hell. You're already dead. He's like, yeah, good point. Puts it on. It's just a funny fight. Puts it on. They fuse. They're stuck together forever. Gonna change the course of the anime. Majin Buu eats them. They defuse.
Well.
What the hell was all that about? Oh, you're stuck forever. Oh, I need to come this. Don't worry, we're going to be stuck forever, but we're going to do this. They make a whole joke like, Chi-Chi's going to be mad. Going to be weird to explain this to our wives, but whatever. And then it's just not a non-factor. Like 2 episodes later, they kill Janemba, and they're done with it. I don't think Janemba was in the same movie. I think that was just in the games they tied that way.
Well, Majin Buu is someone that absorbs people and then, like, gains power from that, right?
Right.
But when you're fully absorbed into Majin Buu,
is
there not the space to separate again?
That's the other thing.
Where's the earring in this?
Majin Buu absorbs people, right, and immediately eats them. He absorbs Vegito. why aren't they immediately just eaten? They go and find these other people that have been trapped and eaten by Boo and are able to free them. But like, why aren't they trapped the same way? Why the earring just protected them, but not enough to... it doesn't make any goddamn sense. They get swallowed by Boo, they get split up, and then they save everybody. It's just know that they come out on top. Yeah. All the plot they set up just kind of just gets thrown out to the side.
Well, they're the protagonists. You know, they're just built different. Like, that's why the story's about them and not about Majin Buu, because Majin Buu loses.
Yeah, I mean, fair.
But that's kind of like how I like to look at those things. You know, like... in a lot of stories, you know, it's kind of like, well, this guy, like, just happened to, like, survive all this crazy shit happening to him. Like no one can get, like, it's so... Yeah,
the Burn Man walks. That's exactly the story.
It's so unlikely for all this stuff to, you know, happen and, like, for them to overcome all this. But it's, like, that's kind of why this is the story.
Right.
You know, I actually really do try to... or I want to seek out... I have before, like, stories where the protagonist loses. Like, that's what I've spoken about, like, you know, the movie 2012, the movie Knowing. Like, you know, it just ends in the apocalypse.
Yeah, you ever watched Sin City? Either those movies?
No.
Those are real good. They're done in, like, the noir style, and even the newer one they did, they kept that style of just being, like, black and white, but then, like, the only things that are there are, like, red is the only color that pops, like the red dress, when people bleed and whatnot. Mm-hmm. And that's, like... one of the old-timey movies, just like Clockwork Orange, and not really like the same type, but they just have a bad ending to where, like, nobody wins in the end. The bad guys are just going on being the bad guys, and, like, everybody's efforts are futile, and it just... that's the whole moral of the story, basically.
Mm-hmm. The Mist, and...
ooh, that's the one. I know I've never seen that movie. I know the ending though, and it's...
I know the ending, and I haven't seen it either. I kind of wish I'd seen it blind, but
same.
You know, at the time that it would have been, you know, released and caught my interest for literally any other reason than the one that makes it notable to me, the ending. I just think I would have been too young for it. Probably would have fucked me up.
We gotta watch The Collector together. That's one of my favorite horror movies that has exactly what you're describing of the protagonist. I don't want to spoil it, but he ends up winning in the end, but in a different way than you would expect. It's almost like exactly what you're describing. It's a really, really good horror movie. I love it. Collector and The Collection, the sequel.
I was also thinking the Lord of the Flies. You know, at the end, they all end up fine, except just because they're, you know, kids and they're immature and they're trying to take power and stuff like that. They ended up killing one of them.
Yeah.
You know, kicked them off a cliff or whatever.
Right.
And that's sort of like a bad ending. Like, I guess they survived, but, like, they ended up killing someone when they really, like, didn't have to.
Yeah, no, it was just one of those things of, like, securing power and securing control is supposed to be, like, a lesson of, like, even the young minds will be corrupted in such a way. But it wasn't even true. There was, like, a real-life Lord of the Flies situation that happened where it was, like, 3 teenage kids stranded on an island. They ended up dying there, unfortunately, but they found them, like, the remnants of the small civilization they had built. And they were working together, having a decent time. No signs of struggle, no signs of murder and backstabbing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel like, humans actually end up being a bit more... actual humanity is a bit more optimistic than, you know, our portrayals of it.
Sure.
Which is definitely better than the other way around. Like, oh, the negative portrayals of humanity actually aren't even as bad as we really get. Which actually, you know, is also probably true. There's a whole range of humanity.
Yeah. Yeah, as much as I'd like to believe that people are naturally good, I do have to accept that there are some that are just, I don't know if naturally bad, but at the end of the day bad. For whatever reasons.
Yeah. I found a wacky package sticker in my laundry.
Package sticker?
Wacky package?
Oh, like a Wacky Package is the company?
Yeah, you remember those?
No.
They were produced by Mad, you know, like the magazine, TV, and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And it was just stickers of brand name things, but it's like they just make it gross or stupid or weird or something like that.
Yeah, I get you. Like instead of Fruit of the Loom, it's like Fruit of the Poo or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. I thought those were the funniest shit when I was really, really young. So we have this little entertainment center in my room. And so I was like, I got all these stickers. I think they're so cool. And I put them all over that piece of furniture. My mom was like, why did you do this?
Why'd you fuck this up?
She wasn't that mad. I mean, it was in my room, but like, she's like, you shouldn't do that. Like, you should never do that. The real location for stickers is laptops and mini fridges, not full-sized fridges.
Yeah,
mini fridges.
Full-size fridges are for magnets. Mini fridges, they get stickers.
Yeah,
I agree with that.
And I also think that laptops, like putting an actual sticker on a laptop, is a little bit like, I've done it, but you know, I'm more likely to, if I really want a sticker on it, which I don't, I would put it on a case that I put on the laptop. Water bottles.
Yeah, good place for them. Kind of makes them tough to wash, but...
Yeah, I actually haven't done that one. That is something that seems a little bit hard about it, but...
Even water bottles just with, like,
there.
built-in designs on the side. If they just don't have, like, the proper vinyl coating on them, even if you don't machine wash them, they can just wear off. It's kind of unfortunate. We had, like, a Bob's Burgers one we just did a throwaway because it was just washing off onto other dishes as we were hand washing it. We're like, all right. Not worth.
So, like, I actually really like, I call it, like, an evidence of living, where the things that we have, you know, they wear down in the ways that we use them. And I think it's actually really cool. You know, like, if you have, like, a knife and, you know, you're using it and you're sharpening it and stuff like that, and it starts getting a bit shallower, you know, like, the blade doesn't have as much... Not thickness, but, you know, the space from the bladed side to the not bladed side.
Yeah.
As it gets shorter, that's evidence of it being used.
Yeah.
I like cast iron for this reason, because it's sort of like
you get to
does
see
the opposite.
You see the history of it as you clean it and whatnot.
Yeah, but I draw the line at something like disintegrating, and like getting, like, if something is actually just poorly made, and it's like this design washes off and gets onto other dishes. Then I'm like, well, this is just kind of bad.
Yeah.
You know?
Like that fucking chair I got on the balcony.
Yeah, the chair that I sit on, and it turns the back of my shirt purple because
it's literally disintegrating. Not great. Need a new one of those.
Mm-hmm. But I don't know. The concept of decay is really intriguing to me. Like seeing, you know, some stone stairs, right? And they're so well worn that every single stair has like a little bit of a dip in it.
Right.
Good for walking on? Probably not. But it's evidence of people, of living, of being used.
That is true.
And that's also why I like, you know, older bridges and stuff like that. Like having a little bit of rust on them. Rust and vines on metal are like very visually appealing to me.
But it's also like detrimental to the metal itself.
Yeah, well, they kind of like stop using the bridge if it's gonna get bad, you know.
Not in Chicago.
Yeah, well, that's fair. But you know what? Also, that shit isn't broken. So, you know, it's probably got a lot of engineering into it.
There's some bridges in Chicago that are like hanging on by a thread, like damn near broken. The concrete falling off onto people on Lakeshore Drive and Lower Wacker and shit.
Yeah, well, I don't go to Lower Wacker that often. I don't like how Google Maps works in Lower Wacker, and the fact that Google Maps sends you to Lower Wacker.
I should take like, Lower Wacker.
Well,
that sucks.
I think Lower Wacker is a very cool space. You know, especially having...
Make it a walking place. Don't make cars go down there. Make it like a bike trail only place. Cars don't belong down there.
Well, they kind of do. Trucks belong down there. Like, you and I have worked in the wedding business, the floral business, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And there's, like, entrances to buildings down there where it's, like, there isn't enough space. Like, you do not want to park a truck upstairs or, like, on the actual, like, downtown floor. Make
it a truck-only thing, then. Cars do not need to be down there dipping and diving between poles and fucking people and bikes and all this terrible shit. While concrete's falling down on you to boot.
You know, and I think we've come to an agreement. You know, we should bring this to the mayor. Yeah, I bet he'd love our ideas.
Yeah.
No, it's Brandon Johnson.
Isn't it? Oh, do we not have Lori Lightfoot anymore? I don't keep up with politics.
Election.
Last election.
Putting the hard and cold hard.
Ayo. When was the last election? Did that happen?
I think it was last summer. I don't know. It was like not. It was like I could walk to my local polling station a block away in like shorts and a t-shirt, I think. Which was also really cool that my polling station was literally a block away. I live near a park. That park has like a little administrative building, and I just walked in, and that was my spot.
Nice.
Yeah. I love when voting's convenient. What other decay stuff was I really into? Oh, in the back of my house, or my mom's house, we have this yard, but the like plot of land is actually an entire acre, and goes all the way to this bike trail, quite a bit back. So, as a kid, I'd go back there and I'd explore quite a bit. And back there in those woods, there is a foundation for a house. It is a concrete basement with some, parts of it have fallen apart and stuff like that. I mean, it's not a very functional foundation.
Right.
There's no house either. But it's very, very cool to come across that. There's like some rotting stove. There's a tree where, like, underneath its roots, or like as its roots, like from the bottom of the tree, are like heading down towards the ground. There's a tire underneath it. So there's no way you're ever going to get that tire out without cutting down the tree. It is claimed.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, it literally grew around it.
Yeah, and I think that's sort of where I get, like, or part of why I have such an interest in these, like, things decaying, like, showing their age of, like, they've stuck around for a while and, like, they are weathered and they are still here.
I dig that too.
I think it's neat,
Yeah. I like the palm tree that like had fallen over but then continued to grow, so it's literally got this wicked like L bend in it.
Oh yeah.
So cool.
When I was in California a week ago, they got all the palm trees everywhere, and as they grow, like, they'll have this sort of like woolly part of it underneath, like the top of the tree where the fronds are coming out. Those are just dead fronds. A bunch of dead fronds laying down on top of each other that makes it sort of like
pad for the other fronds to grow.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I just think it looks really cool that, it's sort of having this like dead stuff hanging off like near the top, and it makes it look kind of fuzzy,
Yeah. Neat.
Also, apparently, there's only like one female coconut tree in the state because apparently they were outlawed.
Whoa.
My brother's girlfriend was telling me about this.
Why? What?
Kills more people than sharks a year.
What do you mean, just like by falling coconuts?
Bonk.
What are male coconut trees then? Are they not bonk?
Yeah, they don't make coconuts.
What? What do they do then? How does a male coconut tree not make? How is it a coconut tree then?
Pollinate. It's the same species. Doesn't produce coconuts.
Huh. Interesting. Is that just like something they've done? Like they genetically engineer it to not make coconuts?
No, it's just the male ones don't. I mean, like, nature's really weird.
Huh.
There's a lot of plants that like some plants have males and females and other ones don't. Like I heard that, even calling them a male and female is probably, I don't know, not entirely correct. Because, like, I feel like that's more of a...
I'm not a horticultural expert.
Thing.
Yeah, I have no idea.
I'm not a horticultural expert either. I think it's male and female with that kind of feels more like an analogy. But I'm also probably wrong. But yeah, coconut trees. Bonk on the head. Kills people. Durians. The incredibly smelly fruit.
Yeah, I've seen people harvest those. It's nuts.
They got nets.
Yeah,
all around those trees.
It's
like
crazy.
Every single inch around them is
like a
typically netted.
30-pound spiked weight coming down to hit you.
Yeah.
Even if it missed you, the thing would lash you open.
Yeah. I mean, if it hits the ground hard enough, it probably explodes, right?
Shrapnel everywhere. Yeah. Jesus. Fruit gets nature's grenade.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like grenades kind of look like pineapples, right?
I mean, like, literally the first grenade was designed as the pineapple grenade. I don't know if
Yeah.
it was the first, but it was one of the first widely used ones.
Mm-hmm.
They tried to make it weigh and shape like a baseball, so that soldiers would have not a hard time learning to throw it.
That is pretty interesting engineering.
Right.
That is user first, baby. You know your clientele.
Yes, indeed. There's a lot of weird stuff like that. Like they, I think it was on like training. I don't know if submarines or like different battle tanks, but they like made the controls basically an Xbox controller.
I've seen that, yeah.
So it like makes the soldiers able to just like adapt to it a little easier.
The first thing I've seen that, or the first instance in which I saw that was a picture of someone controlling a bomb diffusing robot.
Yeah. And I'm pretty sure they only do it in like test things. Like they can learn
And submarines.
Right. This is only for test, I hope. That'd be wild if like the U.S. Navy is actually out there with Xbox 360 controllers making shit work. I assume they actually teach them the real controls later, but they just get to learn the, you know, how the thing works.
Well, why wouldn't it work?
Well,
I mean, it's a device that, you know, you at least has to fit like consumer standards for wireless connection. You only have, this kind of brings back to the beginning of the episode. There's only so many things you have to do that if the controller has enough buttons, you could map that to the controller and you'd probably have a more intuitive bomb diffusing robot.
Right, but when they make stuff, I doubt they want to pay like Xbox any sort of money to actually put it into their machines. Like they probably pay them a nominal fee, or even if at all, to like use it for training exercises and whatnot. But I feel like the regular machines that they make and use probably have their own proprietary controls, and they don't worry about if they have to map them to an Xbox controller. I would hope they're not making tanks like, what are we going to do with RB? Is that going to be reload? Is it going to be aim? Is it going to be aim the second gun? I hope they're not thinking about that, because that would be kind of wild.
Well, I mean, I also think that a lot of, like, we don't need to make things digital, and, like, in controlling vehicles and stuff like that, I really prefer non-digital.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I have an automatic gear shift, but I still gotta move the thing, you know? I have a steering column that connects to whatever, the axle, I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know
whatever
about
system
cars,
is
but it
power
connects
steering,
to it
yeah.
directly, yeah. And you get the feedback from it. You know, if you hit a bump or the wheel goes, you know, gets pushed to go in a certain direction, do something, like you feel that in holding it. You don't get that with digital.
No.
You know, just having little pads that send like information, you know, like physical connections, like hard switches that you flick, and like the hard like metal ones that are like little pointy things, or like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, ones you actually have to like flick on.
Yeah, but not like a light switch, like the little metal thing.
Yeah, actual like toggle switch.
Yeah, I think those are really cool.
Yeah, I like them. I also really like, it's like a bygone technology because it's just so inefficient and not like well to use, but the it was used in like old-timey arcade machines of like, I don't even know exactly what it's called. It's got like that cage in front of it, and it makes like the arc of light for like numbers and whatnot. It was usually used for like displays before LCD was around. Let me see if I can look up a picture of it. I forget what the hell it was called, but it's like, it's a really old esoteric. I just love the look of it. These things.
Yeah, what the fuck
is that? Exactly. It's a super old esoteric fucking, what the hell was it called? What's it called? Okay, so yeah, it is vacuum tube technology. It's called the Nixie tube. So it's similar to CRT. It displays information using a glow discharge, using multiple cathodes. So it's basically just like very specifically shaped tubes, and yeah, it was just...
What? It only does one thing?
An electronic device displaying numerals and other information. So yeah, that was the thing, is you had to basically shape the tube in the way that I guess it had to be used.
Oh, okay. That's not very flexible.
See, like, yeah, that's what the tubes look like and what they had to shoot them through just to make the one number. So it was like compact. Oh, a compact way to use electricity as opposed to a cathode ray tube, which is big and fat and had to use the, you know, the big screen. But it was just so like complex that LEDs and LCDs were just an obvious, like, easier choice. But yeah, that design, like those numbers flowing, I love that. That just reminds me like kind of old, dingy, like diesel punk, steampunk kind of deal. Just like that technology that was ahead of its time, but also at the same time obsolete right when it came out, because it was just like, what are we doing? As soon as something new came out, they're like, what were we even thinking when we were trying to do shit like that?
When you were first explaining to me and showing it to me, I thought that was just like an empty tube, and they just used a fuck ton of math to like figure out how to make a 6 with it.
This is just to figure out how to make light display in like a very particular way.
Yeah.
They just have all these crazy complex tubes, and they shoot whatever is in cathode ray tubes. I assume is it cathode rays? Electrodes?
Yeah.
I don't know.
So the way that I mean, you know what CRT stands for, right?
Cathode ray tube. Yeah.
Cold hard trash. I was teeing up that joke in my head for a while, but
It does stand for cold hard trash because it's an abbreviation, not an acronym. If it was an acronym, I would agree the podcast should be called CHT, but it's not. CRT.
Well, I didn't. I was thinking about that joke, and then you literally just said cathode ray tube, and then I was like, aha, now's my chance to make that joke.
And it was right over my head. I completely...
Yeah.
I whiffed that. You
goofy.
alley-ooped me, and I just fucking slapped
No,
it against the backboard.
I'm saying it's my fault. You said cathode ray tube, and I was like, that's my cue. Do you know what CRT stands for? As we're talking about them.
And I should have teed you right back like cold hard trash, but I didn't.
Yeah. Okay, fine, it's your fault.
Let me take the blame, damn it.
But the way those work is that you have an electrical field and a magnetic field, and like they're perpendicular, and so you have one beam of electrons shooting out, and you have the fluorescent like things on the front of the screen in a like a matrix thing, and you use the electrical field and the magnetic field to like one of them turns the ray left to right, one of them turns it up and down, and then you use that to aim it at different points. So if you ever like took a video of a CRT TV and you had it in slow mo,
scan lines.
Yeah, it has the scan lines. If you have it slow enough, you'll see it actually go across each line, and it'll go back and forth because, yeah, I mean it's you just have one cathode ray tube, and then you use some shit to aim it while keeping it stationary. You aim the beam, and then bada bing, bada bop.
Yeah,
TV.
I love old technology. So it's so cool to see like how we used to solve the same problems that we're solving today, just like in different ways. It's neat.
Yeah. I also think like that sort of like lends a lot of character to these different mediums. Like I recently got a actual film camera. My brother found it in my mom's basement.
Neat.
And I am currently looking into how to like actually use it, because I'm not even 100% sure that it's functional, but I'm like figuring it out and seeing all this stuff and like how like actual photography would like be done was really cool. Like we use the term long exposure, and I don't even really think that long exposure in terms of like our digital phone cameras is the same thing as a traditional long exposure. Because an actual long exposure is you just keep the thing open and it imprints light as it goes in on top of previous low light or sometimes low light images.
Right,
and
like
that's
when
how you're trying to do it.
you do like things for the sky, so you can capture stars and whatnot when they're at different brightnesses.
But digital cameras don't have like a back, they don't have a piece of film that is subject to like, a long exposure.
Right, they just overlay the pictures.
Recording.
Yeah.
You're recording and then doing some digital changes and stuff like that, but that's not long exposure. That's it is a digital recreation of what long exposure was.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, the long exposure pictures I've taken, because I actually really don't like that my phone will do this when I'm like trying to take a picture in low light.
It'll adjust it.
It'll try and figure out if it needs flash or long exposure, and it's like, no, I want my shitty, unrecognizable like shot just as I'm looking at it through here. I'm not trying to have you change like a billion things. I'm looking at the screen and I want to save that.
Yeah.
I've also I have before made my photo taking method. I open up the camera and then I screenshot because I don't know, I was just being obtuse. But also, technically that's how Snapchat works on all those other phones.
Yeah, we talked about that in an episode.
Yeah. Call back. Real trash heads.
Snapchat.
Know what we're talking about.
Snapchat still sucks on non-Galaxy superphones.
Yeah. Do you ever have a Windows phone?
No, I had a buddy in high school that had a Windows phone. I kind of liked the idea of it, and I saw, like, it was right when Windows 8 came out, and they were doing the whole thing of, like, oh, tiles were going to be the thing. And I was like,
that was the UI. It was just a bunch of tiles.
Right, and the phone UI was the exact same, because the phone ran Windows 8. So I was like, oh, I see what you're doing here. This is kind of neat about how, like, you know, it's going to be an integrative UI to where you're being able to go phone to computer. Like, it's just going to be the computer that comes around with you. That's kind of, you know, what the end result of a phone should be. You have all the functionalities of a computer, but you have the ease of access of the phone to do so. And everybody just complained that Windows 8 just sucked on the computer, which it did. It was a phone UI that they tried to put on a PC, and it didn't fucking work. But I was like, that's such a cool idea of, like, being able to do that. Which I don't know if you've ever seen on a Windows PC. But if I can take this controller here, hit my home button, and it brings up my Xbox UI, where I can go to my friends, I can check my games, I can do everything.
So I have done that before, but only ever as an accident. I never, like, I'm just, like, trying to, like, my finger slips or whatever, and I hit that button, and then, like, whatever I'm trying to do gets interrupted because this menu's over it, and
I think it's really cool that somebody could potentially buy a PC, like a whole Windows PC, and beyond, like, having to put in their login info to start it up, they can just plug in a controller and use it like an Xbox.
Yeah.
They can download games, they can play games, they can go and check their games, everything that Xbox can do, and they can just leave it as an Xbox machine.
Well, Microsoft's leaving the console space.
Yeah, and that it all kind of tees up what I was, like, trying to get to. Like, I think the next whatever Xbox, like they say they're leaving the console space, they're probably just going to release, like, pre-built PCs, because why not? And just be like, it's going to have the UI like Windows 11 or whatever is going to be 12 coming out. That is going to be the integration, the final step between, like, Xbox and Windows UI, to where if you want to plug in a keyboard mouse, you could use it that way. If you want to plug in an Xbox controller, you can interface with it that way.
Well, I imagine that they would probably do it because they already have, like, Windows for Professionals, Windows for Windows. I don't think they have many more options now. I think it's probably just Basic and Professionals, but they've had, like, different versions over the years. So I think that would probably end up being, like, just sort of like a side grade operating system.
Sure.
Like, you know, hey, Windows 12 is coming out. There's Professional, Home, and Game.
Yeah, I was going to say Windows for gamers, basically.
Yeah, and, like, the only reason you would ever want Game is if you are, like, buying a computer specifically to be a gaming computer.
I've seen the argument, or not really the argument, but the point online made of people, like, saying, why don't they make a console that has swappable parts where you can just upgrade, you know, a certain part of it instead of having to buy a whole new console? That's probably what Microsoft is going to do. They're going to release, like, Microsoft proprietary GPUs, and they're going to have, like, GPU level 5, and you're going to release an Xbox game, and you can play the Xbox game on your Xbox Game Pass, your Xbox machine, but if you only have GPU level 5, like, our minimum requirements are now GPU level 6 or level 7 and above, sort of deal. And it'll take that ease of access of having to know, like, the differences between an RTX 3060 and a GTX 1080. And, you know, because that doesn't really seem like a whole lot of knowledge to us, maybe, because we're kind of
I don't know shit about it.
Oh, well.
You know, but I don't.
I was going to say, then it'll take, like, someone like you, then you'll be able to understand it a lot easier of, like, oh, yeah, I have GPU 4, and that only plays, like, this level of games consistently, so I can upgrade to 5 or 6, and then that'll get me to these games. You won't have to know exact specifications and, like, how many megahertz it has, how many gigs of VRAM it has. You're not going to need to know. It'll take basically Xbox saying, let us think about that for you. Some people might not like it, but some people might very much appreciate it. People that aren't in the PC space maybe are a little weary about buying an Xbox or buying a PC to begin with instead of an Xbox, but that might ease their concerns.
Yeah. But also, I think it might make sense nowadays, but the reason for particular consoles is kind of more for developers than anything else. I mean, yeah, you need to, like, sell the hardware and stuff like that. You know, that's part of your profit or whatever, but when you're developing, like, you would get, like, this is the development kit for the PlayStation, and, like, these are your constraints as you're going to be building this game, so
right.
You know, you get, like, a lot of information about how it's going to actually run. Right. And that is something that we're really not getting with a computer.
Exactly.
Because,
Something you don't really need with a computer, honestly.
Well, I mean, you buy a game and you don't read the thing, and you can still launch it.
Right.
Even if you don't have the required hardware.
Exactly.
And then it's going to run like shit. And the idea is that you kind of don't want to sell a game that's going to run like shit.
Right.
So you put it on hardware that you know it's going to work for, and that is the only place that you can buy it, is where you're... The only place you can get it is a place where you're going to be getting a good experience with it.
Right. And I feel like that kind of is a very good point, but I feel like that bubble's already kind of burst with the fact that they've done this PS4 and Xbox One hang around for so long, because they have made almost every single game that can come out. You can play on your PS4, or it has a PS4 version that has to be completely ported. You can play on your Xbox One, but it just does worse performance. So people have already kind of realized, like, okay,
We lost the plot of consoles.
Right,
and
it's
their purpose.
the plot's completely gone. You want something that plays video games good. You have something that can play video games, period, but now you want just kind of the best experience for it. And then that's what I'm saying, that I think Microsoft is just going to offer the ease of getting the best experience out of your video games, to where you don't.
I think it makes sense nowadays.
Right, you're not going to have to
crazy.
put in research on how to build a computer. You could just look in the research of, like, what Microsoft games, or what games do I want to play. Like, you look at PUBG or maybe Fortnite, you look at the new Doom or things like that, and you're like, okay, so the most things I would need is like a level 5, a level 4 CPU, and all these. All right, I'll buy these parts. And it's that's all the research you have to do, instead of having to look at different price pointing things. It takes a lot of the competition out of the market. Like, that would probably be, I could foresee a lot of complaints of, like, you're making it too easy for people, and now people aren't going to want to do the research, so therefore the more higher end stuff kind of becomes more niche because of it. But that's natural. It was niche to begin with. If it becomes more niche, that's only, whatever.
Yeah. I do think about how, I think it was the original Crash Bandicoot for PS1. Apparently, the game, like, is sort of bigger than they were supposed to be able to make for a PS1 by using some, like, interesting code to access parts of the system, like parts of RAM, that they aren't supposed to be able to access. So, like, you have your software side, and it, like, runs on RAM and all that shit like that.
Right.
And you're reading it from the disk. But apparently they put some code in it to actually take more of the resources from the system so that they could actually get complete their vision, which I think is really cool.
That's pretty cool. I just wonder how, like, if that was, like, a thing that Sony got mad at. Like, if they found out, like, oh, you guys are breaking your law. We told you to stay within the lines.
Yeah, I still just love, like, the little, like, the shortcuts that you sort of need to take to keep games small. I mean, what was it? Like, the new Call of Duty Black Ops 3 or 4 or 5, or I don't even know.
6 is coming out now.
Okay, well, damn.
We're on 6, my man.
They're just gonna have to start making more modern warfares. Like, we're gonna just pass up up to the modern day.
Yeah, right.
But apparently it's like hundreds of gigs.
Oh yeah,
and then it also has, like, streaming of.
They said
the textures
specifically because they weren't going to. Basically, because they said we're not going to worry about compressing or anything. We only are going to give you 300 gigs of this probably 1,000 fucking gig game, because we think that's going to be too much for you guys to handle. How about you just make it smaller? How about you just don't leave 100 gigabytes of uncompressed audio in there again, you dipshits?
Well, I think I've heard the argument that it's you could do that purposefully if you wanted to, so that the consumer that purchases your game doesn't have space on their hard drive to fit a different game. And now, this would only really work for something like modern Call of Duty, or like most modern day shooters, which run off battle passes.
Sure.
So you may want to cut down on your consumer's ability to spend their money elsewhere. Whether or not they're doing that on purpose, I don't have an answer for.
Yeah, I think it's more just a workaround for, like, cheating and things like that. Instead of having to have de novo where you're encrypting and decrypting the files, you're literally already having a direct access of being online and streaming to them, and probably having to, and running a little background to check, like, make sure the files that we're sending in are all meeting the requirements as we're getting back, because it's going to be a cycle of going back and forth. So they'll be able to tell if something's a little askew with somebody without having to de novo anti-cheat and ruin their game. But they're ruining it in a different way because they say you have to be online perpetually for it because literally you won't have the textures that they're going to stream to you with unless you are.
Yeah, for a single player campaign.
It's stupid.
But, you know, I played Bloodborne before. Bloodborne for the PS3, I think. No, it's PS4. PS3 was Demon Souls. Bloodborne and like other sort of like From Software games from around that time have an issue of teleporting dogs. So, as you're like the way that dogs attack you, like they're really fast.
Right.
So, they're meant to like catch you if you're trying to run. And also like while they're around you, they'll like circle you and they'll like jump at you and shit like that.
Sure.
But in a measure to save memory, things like models that are off screen are culled.
Ah, okay.
So, like, in it's a 30 FPS game, it only updates so frequently.
Right.
And so as you're running away from dogs, they sort of, like, teleport into you mid-attack. Granted, that's because you couldn't see behind you.
Right.
Like, it's not like you were going to be able to avoid that if they didn't teleport, because, you know, that is, like, the amount of time that it kind of took for them to get off-screen to on-screen.
Right.
But they are... Like, they aren't, like, mid-animation, because the animation started off-screen on a culled model.
Right, you just didn't get to see it.
No animation started off-screen. Like, it didn't happen, so it's kind of like a... Not a T-pose, but like a standard pose, because it's a dog, it just sort of stands up.
Right, yeah.
Like, teleporting into your butt and biting you. But I think it's cool, because you kind of had to do that, right? Like,
Yeah,
if you
save
wanted to
space,
have a
yeah.
game that's reasonable enough to download or to even put on a disc, that's the kind of shit you gotta do.
Yeah.
It also makes me feel a little bit better about the Pokemon games. The newest one not running that good because it's like, it's small. It's relatively really small.
Yeah.
Like, and they're pushing the bounds of what you can do with
Oh,
that.
hats off to them then for actually keeping it small like that. This was
I mean,
like-
it fits on a cartridge. It's big.
yeah, a little SD card.
Yeah.
Pretty good. Think we should wrap it up?
Do you know why Blu-rays are called Blu-rays?
I don't know.
You get one guess.
It's because the box is blue?
The ray is blue.
The ray that actually reads the disc?
Yeah, they would
That's
use
the
red
red.
ones, and now they're using blue ones. Blue ones are smaller because of wavelength shit.
Huh, that's it.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you for the factoid on the way out.
No problem. I just had to get it out of my system.
This has been CRT Cold Hard Trash, Episode 5, live on video. Thanks for tuning in. You can catch our episodes Tuesdays at 7 a.m., dropping on Spotify, Amazon, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, everywhere. Go ahead, check all them out. Rate us 5 stars on every single platform. Just go one after the other. Boom, boom, boom. Drop a nice comment. Tell us how good we sound, how nice we look.
Please.
You don't have to. You can tell us how shitty we look too. Any kind of engagement, though. Yeah, it's just as long as you're talking to us, we appreciate you.
Tune in next week for our very special 6th episode.
Very special for reasons that we are yet to discover. See you then.